Have you ever worked a night shift and felt like something was just off? Like you weren't really alone, even when the store was empty? I used to think I was imagining it, until the night I realized I wasn't. I used to work the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station just off the highway. It was usually quiet after midnight, except for the occasional trucker stopping in for coffee or some sketchy-looking guy buying cigarettes. But one night, something changed. It was around 3 a.m. The air was thick and still, like the whole world had stopped breathing. I was restocking shelves when I saw something strange on the security monitor. A man was standing outside, perfectly still, facing the glass doors. He wasn't walking toward the entrance. He wasn't moving at all. He just stood there. I squinted at the screen. His face was pale, almost too pale, and he wore a dark hoodie with the hood pulled up. Something about him made my stomach turn. I walked up to the counter and cleared my throat. We're open if you need something." He didn't react. Then the automatic doors slid open, but he didn't walk in. I stepped back. The man tilted his head slightly. Not like a normal person, though. His movement was too slow, too deliberate. Then, without taking a step forward, he was suddenly inside. I didn't see him move. 1 second he was outside. The next, he was standing in the store. I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin. Sir?" I tried again. My voice came out weaker than I intended. Nothing. He just stood there. Then he turned his head, not toward me, but toward the security camera. The monitor flickered, and suddenly, the footage was playing on a delay. I watched, horrified, as my own movements appeared on the screen 2 seconds after I made them. But the man wasn't delayed. He was watching me in real time.
I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, ready to call the cops. But as soon as I looked back up, he was gone. Not like he walked away. He was just gone. The store was silent. The doors hadn't opened again. The cameras still flickered with their weird delay, replaying the moment he vanished. I hesitated, then walked around the counter, checking the aisles. Empty. Then I heard it, a quiet tapping. I turned toward the back storage room. The door was slightly open. I hadn't opened it that night. The tapping continued, like fingers lightly drumming against the metal shelves inside. I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave, but something in me had to know. I reached for the door and pushed it open. The room was pitch black. The light switch didn't work. And then, just beyond the shelves, something breathed. It wasn't human. It was too deep, too rattling. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I didn't care what was in there. I just knew I didn't want it coming out. I grabbed my keys, ran outside, and sat in my car until the sun came up. The next day, my manager reviewed the security footage. The cameras had cut out completely at 3 a.m. When they came back on, the storage room door was wide open. I quit that same day. But sometimes late at night, when I stop for gas, I catch myself looking at the glass doors, half expecting to see a silent customer still waiting to come in. Working the night shift is weird. The world feels different when most people are asleep. It's quieter, lonelier, but sometimes you're not as alone as you think. I used to work the night shift at a small grocery store in a quiet town. It wasn't a bad job, just long hours of stocking shelves, cleaning up spills, and waiting for the occasional late-night customer. The place was mostly empty after midnight, except for me and my coworker Luis, who worked the register. One night, around 2 a.m., I was restocking the dairy section when I noticed something strange. The freezer door in the back was wide open. That was odd. The freezers were heavy and always swung shut unless someone was holding them open. "Hey, Luis," I called out. "You been in the freezer?" "Nah, man, why?" he replied from the front. I felt a chill, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something wrong. I walked up to the freezer, half expecting to see someone inside, but it was empty. The rows of frozen meats and boxes of ice cream sat undisturbed. I shook it off and shut the door, making sure it clicked closed. But less than a minute later, I heard it creak open again. Slowly, I turned around. The freezer door stood open again, but this time, There was something inside. A man. He stood motionless between the shelves of frozen food. His skin was pale, almost blue, and he wore a tattered coat covered in frost. His breath didn't fog in the cold air. He just stood there, staring at me with lifeless, sunken eyes. I froze. "Sir, are you okay?" No response, no movement. I stepped closer, reaching for my phone. "Sir, you can't be in there. I need to call..." The lights flickered, and he was gone. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering. There was nowhere he could have gone. The freezer had no other exit. I slammed the door shut and ran to the front of the store. Luis gave me a weird look. "Dude, you good?" I was about to tell him what I saw when the automatic doors slid open. A customer walked in, an old man with a hunched back, moving slowly. He came up to the counter, placed a single can of soup down, and looked at me. "You all right, son?" he asked, his voice raspy. I nodded, forcing a weak smile. "Yeah, just long shift," he chuckled. "You've seen him, haven't you?" My stomach dropped. "Who?" "The man in the freezer." I stared at him, my mouth dry. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Long time ago, there was a guy, a drifter, they said, got locked in that freezer by accident when the store first opened. By the time they found him, he was frozen solid, dead." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Every few years," the old man continued, "someone sees him, always around this time, always at night." I turned to look at the freezer. The door was open again, but this time, there were frozen footprints leading out. You ever get that feeling that you're being watched? Not the kind where someone's casually glancing your way, but the type that sends a deep, gut-wrenching chill down your spine? Yeah, I had that feeling on the worst night of my life. I worked the night shift at a 24-hour diner just off the highway, the kind of place that attracts truckers, drunks, and the occasional lost traveler. Most nights were dull, just me, my coworker Jake, and our sleepy cook, Marty. But one night was different. It was around 2:30 a.m. when he walked in. Tall, thin, dressed in a long black coat. His hair was slicked back, and his skin was off, pale, almost grayish under the fluorescent lights. He didn't sit at a booth like normal customers. Instead, he stood by the entrance, just staring. "Hey man, you need a table?" I asked, forcing a friendly tone. Nothing. No response. Jake glanced at me and muttered, "Creepy." I laughed it off, but something about this guy made my skin crawl. Finally, he glided to a booth at the far end, the one right under the broken light that flickered constantly. He didn't even look at the menu. He just sat there, watching. I grabbed my notepad and hesitantly approached. "What can I get you?" His lips barely moved. "Coffee." That voice, low, almost a whisper, but it echoed, as if the walls absorbed it and threw it back at me. I rushed to the counter, trying to shake the nerves. I poured him a cup, hands slightly shaking, and walked back. But when I got to the booth, he was gone. The seat was empty. The coffee was untouched. "Dude, where'd he go?" I asked Jake, my voice unsteady. Jake frowned. "What are you talking about?" "The guy. The one sitting right there." I pointed to the booth. Jake looked at me like I'd lost it. "Man, no one's come in for the last hour." I spun around, scanning the diner. The door hadn't opened. There were no footsteps, no sign of movement. But then, I saw it. The coffee cup still sitting on the table, stone cold. I felt my stomach drop. I just poured that coffee seconds ago. Then something else caught my eye. The seat, it was covered in dust. Thick, undisturbed dust, like no one had sat there in years. I took a shaky step back when suddenly, bang! The front door slammed open, rattling the windows. A freezing gust of wind blew through, knocking over the salt shakers and napkin holders. The fluorescent lights flickered violently. Then just as quickly as it started, silence. Marty the cook poked his head out. "What the hell's going on out here?" I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Jake turned pale. He pointed to the counter, his hands shaking. "Dude, look." I followed his gaze and my breath hitched. On the counter, scratched into the wood, were 3 words: "See you soon." I quit the next morning. You never know who or what you'll run into on the night shift. Some customers never really leave. They just wait. Want more terrifying encounters? Check out this next video on 3 true scary roommate stories. Trust me, you'll never look at your roommate the same way again.